just like to say hello to everyone who we've got on the screen and got colleagues in the room as well. I'd like to just remind everyone to keep background noise to a minimum. We only speak one person at a time. So having asked you to put all your microphones off mute so you can speak, can you put them all back on mute again now so that we've got them quiet again? Usual thing, put your hand up electronically if you want to interject, or we use the chat function as well. We are recording the meeting, so don't say anything naughty that you don't want to be appearing on the council's YouTube website. So we are recording the meeting. We've had apologies. Oh no, we've actually had apologies from Sally, but Sally, you're on the call already. Okay. That was a preemptive apology because you might have been late with the meeting with Dan Lawrence, but it looks like you're back in the room again. So thank you. Okay, so we're going to start very quickly. Jackie Head is just going to give us a quick update regarding the Climate and Nature Emergency Working Group. Then I'll go on to other notices. So Jackie, do you want to say your bit?
Yeah, so it's just, we normally do a little update in every forum meeting, so that's what I'm doing now. So just to let you know that the forum working group has been running we're having our 23rd meeting in September, so nearly 2 years. We've got 29 members. There's been turnover over time, but we've got 29 members now and 27 people who also are getting all the information from the group and following us closely. We're working in 3 different subgroups now, 1 home energy, 2 sustainable transport, and the other nature protection. Nature protection have actually been working quite a bit in their individual villages, but they have a plan for the next stage of their work. They've managed to make a connection with somebody who's in a new role in Baines, nature recovery manager in Baines. That person will be in turn advertising or putting into place a new role, which is the nature recovery project officer for the Chew Valley. And what they're hoping to do is to work very closely alongside that person to think strategically about ways to protect nature within the Chew Valley. So that's the nature protection group. We have a home energy group who are very focused at the moment on thinking about the energy crisis over the winter and the cost of living crisis. And they are trying to disseminate information within the valley about various kind of offers of support or grant that can be given to people to help them get through this particularly difficult time this winter. And the Sustainable Transport Group have been collaborating now for about a year with the transport planners in Wecker and Baines. So we have a regular meeting every 6 weeks with that group. And that has finally sort of seen fruit just in the last couple of months. We've been part of a bid for bus service improvement plan money, BSIP money, as you might have heard of it. And that's a proposal that we were asked to put, and we put to Baines for a circular route, a new circular bus route in the Chew Valley and a new cross valley bus route. And both of those things are now being put together into a bid for BSIP money from Wecker. The second thing we've been working on is dynamic demand responsive transport, and we are working with Wecker with a longer sort of horizon on that particular plan, maybe a couple of years' time, to get this kind of Uber style facility within the Chew Valley. We've also been working with Bikeability and have managed to get, there was a course in August for people to learn how to cycle with their families or in groups. And it was so successful that it's now being done in October as well. And finally, we're looking into a electric bike hire scheme for the Chew Valley to try to introduce as many people as possible to using electric bikes. So the work continues. We're all about collaboration with Wecker, with Baines. we're trying to be on the front foot and do things that really make a difference across the valley in terms of the climate and nature emergency. And we always welcome new members, so please do consider joining us as well. Thanks.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Jack. And
I'm going to go now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Unless anybody's got any questions, I'm going to go at this point.
Just wanted to say that the bus event that you had at Bishop Sutton Hall, we had about 110 plus people come to that, which was the largest turnout that Dan Norris had seen in any of the bus consultation events. So I just want to say thanks to you and your team for organising that, which was really well attended and really well put together. And I think some very clear messages got back to Dan and the WECA team for that. So yeah, thanks for that. And see you later. The other thing, just on that, actually, the reason we're slightly down on numbers tonight is that Dan Norris has called a WECA meeting with parish councils to look at bus routes and bus transport. So I know a number of people who would normally have been on this call tonight have gone to that instead. So we're slightly down on numbers, and I'm not sure whether Sally was at that meeting earlier, with a precursor to that meeting earlier, but just to let you know that sort of stuff going on.
I'm being very
Go on, Sally.
cheeky. I'm being very cheeky and doing both.
Oh,
I'm being very cheeky,
okay.
and I got one on one, doing one on the other.
Okay, we won't tell anyone then, Sally. All right, that's fine. What I just wanted, this is Richard, are you okay just to swap with Ashley, because Ashley's about to get locked out of the building and he wants to just do his very quickly. So Richard, are you okay for a few minutes?
Yeah, that's fine with me, Chris. Just to say it's a joint presentation between myself and Fidelia Richardson, so it's fine with me. Is okay. It fine with you, Fidelia? Yeah, that's fine then, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I do apologise. We do have an unstable connection at this end, so I'm still not quite getting everybody's live movements. But I think that I got the message across that. So Ashley, will you be okay to do yours straight away? But before I did that, I just wanted to say that there's an event on Saturday, the 1st of October, adapting to climate change and biodiversity emergency. What we can do to help, taking place between 10 and 3 at the old schoolrooms in Chew Magna. The event will cover a range of aspects: flood resilience, and look at the Buntham Lane flood footpath refurbishment, details of the Cheese project, which is about home energy audits, and items from the Chew Magna Climate Nature Emergency Working Group looking at rewilding, energy recycling, and leaflets on water use and conservation. So that's at the Chew Magna Hall. So we'll put a link to that in the notes of the meeting as well. Is that okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to crack Ashley. Are you okay to do your bit now, and then we'll leave yours, and then we'll go over to Richard, if that's okay. So over to you, Ashley.
That's very kind. I think Lynn may have had a question, if I might, Richard.
Sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, it was just to say that we're going to be doing Resilience Day as well that day. The flood stuff is Resilience Day. We're in the Millennium Hall, but we thought it was really fortuitous because both our focus is going to be on climate change, and the Buntham Lane thing is like a site visit to see the natural flood management system that's going to be put in place there.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for clearing that up. We'll make sure that's reflected in notes for people that aren't on the call as well. Brilliant. Okay, Ashley, over to you then. So Ashley's going to speak to us on about developing livable neighbourhoods and what this means for our forum area. Okay.
Thank you ever so much. Hopefully people can see what I'm showing. Let me just play from start.
Can I just check that you're not going to do 14 slides?
I've got 13 slides, but I'll rattle through. I was given a brief of 15 to 20 minutes. Is that right?
Okay, yeah. I allow 5 minutes per slide normally, but there you go. If you're going to
I won't. I'll do my best to rattle on through it. Let's keep an eye on time though. We're here to talk about livable neighbourhoods. It's myself on the call. There's Joe, who has has been involved, I think, Joe, from the start of the programme, really, haven't you, if I remember rightly?
Yeah, just about. So I've been involved in the project since August 2020.
2020, whereas I came in sort of March, April time this year. So Joe does a really good job for me in terms of providing all that backstory and what have you. And Claire, I worked with on the Clean Air Zone project in Bath, and we're bringing some of that expertise that we learnt about doing the Clean Air Zone project across to this project as well. I don't know if you want to say hi, Claire.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, in terms of what we're going to talk about, just a bit of an overview of what Livable Neighbourhoods are, why we are needing to do this programme, where we're doing these first phases, where we've got to in the programme so far, both in terms of what we've done to date and also what we're doing now, and then kind of what the next steps are, and then Q&A. When I do go through this, I did notice it's very urban, if I'm honest. And that the reason for that is because generally livable neighbourhoods have been rolled out to date in urban settings. Now, we are working on that in terms of a rural setting, because at the moment we are doing livable neighbourhoods in Whitchurch Village and also Temple Cloud. So I've highlighted those in the presentation in terms of areas that we're working on, which are, I would have thought, you know, more in keeping with that sort of Chew Valley area. It is novel, it's not been done before. So as I say, when we come to some of the imagery, it is very urban, but we are working on how we apply livable neighbourhoods, not just in that urban setting, but also in that rural setting as well, if that makes sense. So without labouring the point any further, I'll crack on. So in terms of what livable neighbourhoods are, what we're effectively looking to do is reallocate road space. So we've got a better balance between what pedestrians, cyclists, people perhaps who are wheeling, and motorists need within that public realm environment. We're making more space for active travel, which is good in terms of that health benefit and also social cohesion, healthier, more pleasant places to sit and relax, meet people, have conversations and all the rest of it. So I think even from this first slide, you can see that there's been a lot of talk often about what we call low traffic neighbourhoods. Livable neighbourhoods, we're taking a much more holistic approach. It's not just about traffic, it's also about how people move around the space, how they interact, and a more sort of, as I say, holistic view of that public realm. Typical features that we look to, so if we're looking for actual interventions that we might put on the road or on the footway or in public spaces, we're looking at things like wider pavement, drop curves, dedicated lanes where we've got space to do that, or potentially slowing traffic down and reducing speed so that we can share space more safely. Modal filters and vehicle restrictions, so that we're restricting traffic on certain streets and reducing or removing that through traffic that's potentially a problem. Often speeding to do some sort of queue jumping or cut a journey by a few seconds potentially. But also, as I said earlier, improving those social spaces with better planting, street furniture, wayfinding, that sort of thing. And as part of this programme, certainly in the city centre environments, we're also including things like resident parking schemes in the overall programme. Because in a way, that's looking at things like effectively just reduced demand management by reducing the availability of parking spaces for people who are perhaps commuting in and all that sort of thing, or informal parking spaces for people who are commuting in. What we're really looking to do is do this as a community-led programme. We're also very focused on making sure that this programme is delivering against the climate and ecological emergency objectives. So for us, that filters down to delivering less car trips, improving biodiversity of our two key things. And also, as I said earlier, it's about community engagement. So this is also pushing that agenda of giving people a greater say. And we'll come on to in a bit more detail in a second how we do that. It's being proposed and led by communities. So proposals have been put forward by ward members in consultation with parish councils often and resident associations. And as I said when I started, these aren't new. They have been successfully, and sometimes less successfully, if I'm honest, trialled and implemented in urban environments. But what I think is new and novel is where we're trying to implement these in more rural locations to try and improve matters in these smaller, say, more rural communities. Why do we need these livable neighbourhoods? I think, as I said earlier, you know, it's about getting this balance back right. You know, cars to some extent have taken over our environments, certainly our public realm, and it's about just getting that balance back and getting space back for walking, cycling, and such like, and allowing people to, I guess, have the space to encourage them to take those active modes of travel up and to do things differently. And I've got a slide or an image in a second which kind of builds on that a little bit more. Obviously, as I said earlier, we're delivering against those climate and ecological emergency targets. And I think it's important to recognise that we all have a part to play in improving air quality, improving our own health, and reducing the emissions that often plague places, not only in city centres. We've even got rural areas like Temple Cloud, which are suffering from poor air quality. I think, you know, looking at the equalities kind of aspect of it, we've also often got the most vulnerable that we're putting at the greatest risk. So we've got young children, we've got older adults, we've got various parts of our society that you might call more vulnerable, who are often put, as I say, at risk by this sheer volume of car traffic that we've got moving around. Sorry, something there. Okay. I think we have to be careful to sort of position ourselves. We're not anti-car. The car definitely still has a place, but again, I come back to the point, we're after that balance. It's not about the car dominating, and I think we'd all probably agree that we've kind of got to that point where cars are saturated. Are saturating the place. And if I look at the graphic on the right hand side, if I compare, you know, getting a bunch of people from A to B in a bus or coach and the volume of road space that takes on foot or on cycle versus car, it's not going to change if we're not careful by just moving to electric or even potentially autonomous vehicles. We're still going to have a load of cars moving around. So we've got to do something. It's not just about that transition to electric or EV. It's also about thinking of a different way to do things. Sorry, I don't know why this keeps hacking off. So this is the graphic I was talking about. We get to these sorts of scenarios where someone's looking at getting their child to school and there's so much traffic about that they don't want to walk him to school anymore, you know, so they drive him. So that's a sort of crazy scenario that we get into where traffic, as it says in the slide, is inducing traffic. We can do things about this. It's not, I think, just about us putting in measures to restrict traffic or cause people to do different things. You know, I think the other important point is, and the behaviour change point, which is why Claire's involved in this work as well, and her team, is to reflect on the fact that we all have a choice. We can all do things differently. We can travel less, consume less. And I think this is a big one for me. Care more about others in our communities and just think about those routes that we're taking and the impact that they're having. And when we're using that little cut through, the impact that's having on that particular community. And so when we are drivers, just thinking more about where we're driving and taking more care about the other road users that we encounter. And that's all encouraging people as well in terms of that behaviour change to feel safe doing something different. We have an ability to adapt. I know we all feel probably there's not much we can do, but I think we can do things, and a good place to start, and this is a really interesting statistic really, if we can all do something different, even just 1 or 2 trips a week, it's not necessarily about giving up the car completely, that makes an enormous difference. If I think about peak traffic, say in Bath, it's if we take out a couple of trips a week, so about 20% of the traffic, we've lost the peak. You know, it's not all or nothing. You know, just making those few differences can make an enormous difference in aggregate. So I think that's a really important point to take home. In terms of where we are in terms of LNs, the first phase that was decided on were these 15 areas here. You can see in terms of more rural locations, we've got Temple Cloud and Whitchurch Village and Queen Charlton. The rest of the locations at the moment are in Bath, and they range from small areas, often just one road in an area like Southlands, for example, up to very large areas like the Circus and Lower Lansdowne. Sorry. In terms of where we are so far, autumn 2020, so when Jo said that she started, we consulted on the strategy itself. Summer the following year, we had 48 applications came forward with requests for livable neighbourhoods, and the 15 that we've just showed on the previous slide were prioritised for this first phase. Back in winter, where we would be now, so winter 2021 stroke 2022, held a public engagement with people to understand the broad themes that they were interested in their area. So what was good, what issues they experienced, and what they'd like to see improved. That sort of thematic feedback. And I think, as I said, all the way through, this is not just about a series of traffic interventions. This is about improving health and well-being first and foremost in these communities. So in terms of what we're doing now, over the summer, residents have attended a series of co-design or co-development workshops to share their ideas and thoughts and get down to the point of identifying potential solutions on maps. So this is, again, part of that having a bigger say agenda in terms of what residents think that would improve things in their area. We've then gone back, and we're just finalising this process at the moment, gone back and reflected what people have said back to them just to make sure that we've got it right. And at the same time, we've asked them to prioritise what out of all the sort of long list of measures that they have put forward, they would like to see prioritised in their areas. We've also gone out there and taken that to schools and various other groups who often find it hard to have their voice heard. So, for example, we did a workshop at Camley Primary School in Temple Cloud. So we're not just focusing on those people that come to us, we're also going out there and meeting people as well. Sorry. In terms of what happens next, we have got the thankless task of shortlisting what people have said that their priorities are, and assessing those in all seriousness against things like cost, practicality, how long they might take, and all sorts of other factors aligned with the original sort of strategy, with a view to making a recommendation to ward members and lead members around what's taken forward to preliminary design. Once those preliminary designs are drawn up, then we'll do a big, wide public engagement exercise, again, giving people another chance to have their say. And then finally, we've got a formal public consultation step on the detailed design. Slightly confusingly, that can either be a public engagement as we would normally think about it, or we are potentially bringing some of these interventions forward under what are called experimental traffic regulation orders, where the consultation exercise is part of the. Just 2 minutes, honestly. Yeah, promise. Thank you. Sorry, I've been kicked out. I know you've probably said 2 minutes too, Chris.
It's doing my job for me, actually.
Sorry, I've lost my thread. So some interventions will be trialling on street and giving people a chance to have their say whilst the intervention's in place. Okay, as I say, trial interventions. Just 1 second. Trial interventions, we're looking at 4 of those starting from the autumn. As I say, they'll allow people to have their say and experience that intervention whilst it's in place. I've rattled through that last couple of slides, obviously, because we're under time pressure. Has anyone got any questions? I might do this on the move.
That's fine. Thanks, Ashley. And yeah, really sorry for pushing you like that, but it sounds like someone else was doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Can you stop sharing your screen? That's the first thing, because then actually.
Good plan. Yeah, exactly. Let me do that. Great stuff. Here we go.
Thanks very much.
No, it's no problem. Thank you for letting me stay.
Problem.
Cheers. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so usual protocol, if people want to put their hands up, or if the actual or virtual hands. I mean, just one thing that two things actually just to reflect on. One is this, the Temple Cloud. I don't think we've got anyone from Temple Cloud on the call tonight. Apologies if we have, but I don't think we have. That has got really bad air pollution issues, particularly on the A38 and that one particular hill going up, which the surgery sits at the bottom of. So the surgery is right in one of the high impact areas of that traffic pollution, which is a bit of a sort of a bizarre situation where we've got someone where we're supposed to be treating people to get them better, and actually it's making them worse because of where it sits. So that's be really interested to see how you can carry that one forward, actually, particularly given that one of the aims of this group was to work on that A37, A38 corridor as well. So particularly interested in how you do that. But then the second one is there are already small measures in place. So there's the, I know in East Hertfordshire, there's a virtual pavement that's recently gone in. There's obviously 20-mile-an-hour speed limits have gone in a number of villages across the parish, across the area, but also on the Chew Valley Lake, on the dam. I know it's probably doesn't fall directly under your livable neighbourhoods, but the traffic calming measures that have been put in on the dam to allow safer access for pedestrians and cyclists along that path and that particularly fast bit of road, that's the kind of thing that you've sort of been talking about. And again, I think Nick's on the call, but Chew Stoke has had a number of traffic calming measures in physical traffic calming measures in Chew Stoke as well. So interested to see how we can take that forward, particularly in a rural setting. And I know the naysayers will always come back. You know, you said about not taking the journey in the car. The naysayers will always come back and say, well, we have no public transport to do that, and it's so hilly that we can't do it on bikes anyway. So you're just interested to see how that sort of develops going forward. Don't know if anybody either in the room today, because I know my colleagues are in the room as well, or anybody else on the call has anything to say on that. Everyone's very keen to make sure you don't get locked in the building, actually.
It's looking that way. He's now telling me I've got to get out here as well.
Okay. Well, look, we'll share your presentation with, if you can make sure that Sarah's got your presentation, we'll make sure that's shared with colleagues. And as I say, we are slightly down on numbers because of this bus consultation meeting that's happening tonight. Is that okay?
That's great. Thank you ever so much for the opportunity. And if it prompts thoughts and questions sort of later on, we're all on the email or on the phone, and just give us a call or drop us a line. Yeah.
And presumably these interventions can be relatively small as well. I mean, I know on your slides and, you know, in where you've done it, they look like massive, great sort of schemes. But actually, I know there's one in West Hertfordshire as well, outside the pub, the Crown in pub. And, you know, and that is now actually you can recognise that from one of your photos almost as a sort of a seating area. So it can be small interventions as well as, you know, large scale interventions.
I think that's the point. The way that we're doing it anyway is to also consider individual roads or small areas, as well as the larger, more traditional areas that you might think of if it was in a proper sort of, you know, urban setting. And I think that's interesting, Chris, because, you know, again, you can combine traffic interventions potentially with some seating, an improved village gateway, you know, and really create quite a nice space potentially through a livable neighbourhood. It might be slightly different to how people think about them, but it's still improving things for those people on that particular road, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, actually, that's great. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I really do hope you don't get locked in. And we will move on, and we'll continue to watch this. And I think particularly the Temple Cloud one, I know colleagues normally join us on the call from Temple Cloud, but tonight I think they're involved in the bus consultation, so we'll be interested to see how that one goes. Okay, thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, team.
Right, Richard, are you there still? Thank you for giving up your first place on the agenda. So Richard is going to join us tonight to talk to us about Richard's Deputy Head of Planning Policy and going to give an update on the local plan consultation. And Fadila Richardson from the Council's Public Health Team is going to provide us an update on the health and wellbeing strategy as well, if that's okay. So welcome to both of you. So I'll let you go, Richard, I'll let you go first, and then I'll hand over to you, Fadila, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I mean, as you'll see from the agenda, because the two plans or strategies are very closely linked, we've linked them together on the agenda. So what we've actually got for Dana and myself is a sort of joint presentation covering both the health and wellbeing strategy and an update on the local plan. We've actually got it so the slides are first on the health and wellbeing strategy, if that's all right, Chris, and then that flows into the local plan, and then we can have a little bit of a discussion, any questions that people have got after the presentation. So I'll share the screen.
That's fine, Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. My name is Fidelia Richardson. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Strategy Manager for Baines, and with me I have Nancy Towers, who's the Health and Wellbeing Strategy Officer. So we've been working together since June to create or develop a new health and wellbeing strategy. What we're going to do is just talk to you a bit about health and wellbeing in True Valley area, and at the end, if you have any questions, you can ask us. But what we are asking of you is to be able to engage with us. We have a survey that will be launched very soon, and we hope to have you, as long as people in your network, complete the survey, as it will be very helpful for feedback for the creation of the new strategy. Okay. So almost every aspect of our lives impacts our health and well-being and how long we live. This includes our jobs, our homes, access to education, of course, transport, as we heard from Ashley just before me, speaking about transportation, active travel, and how important these things are to our health and well-being. In Bath and Northeast Somerset, we know that lives are being cut short. People who live in certain areas are dying earlier than they should, unfortunately. Next slide. So we know that there are building blocks in place so that everyone in a community can thrive. And those would be things like housing. Our family and friends have an influence on our health and well-being, the food that we eat. So we know food insecurity is something that is coming up quite a bit now. Education, of course, the quality of education and level of education impacts how you're able to provide for your family, for yourself, and it does impact on your quality of life. And of course, health and well-being, transportation, the type of work that you do. So for example, we know that people who are working manual jobs tend to be more prone to be smokers. Surroundings in general do impact your health and well-being. And of course, money and resources, which we know is quite a hot topic in recent times. Well, always, but in recent times with the rising cost of living, money and resources has become quite a bit of a star within these conversations about health and well-being as well. Next slide. So for example, housing can impact our health and our well-being. So in our area, the high cost of living and relatively low wages makes it difficult for many people to afford decent homes. So what we do know is the average weekly pay in Baines is about £587, and the average in England is 687, while the average rental cost is about £1,020. So we do know that there is quite, the wages don't necessarily match up to that. People are living in crowded conditions, or housing that can't be heated or ventilated properly, which of course can lead to mold, which we know can affect our health and well-being, not just necessarily our physical health, but our mental health as well. Because of course, if you're living in those conditions, that really does something for your emotional and mental health. And I believe after this, Nancy, next slide.
Yeah.
Nancy will pick up from here. Okay.
Thanks, Fidelia. Yeah, I suppose so. All that kind of comes together to kind of the issues that we're looking at to input into the health and wellbeing strategy, and I just wanted to explain why it's important. So it really sets the vision for what we're trying to achieve for health and wellbeing in Bath and North East. Some key priorities for improving health and wellbeing for the area. And it will drive and influence the delivery of health and social care in the area over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're working so that it will develop an integrated framework that aligns with all the other local strategies that are looking to build more sustainable communities within the area. And one of the key priorities is going to be around reducing health inequalities and supporting all to live healthy and well lives. So we're looking to engage with local partners and communities to ensure local needs are being met. So that's really why we're here to talk to you today, to find out a bit more about what's important to you in the Chew Valley about your health and well-being. Can you move to the next slide, please? Thanks. So this is just a quick slide to show you kind of the framework that we're working to and the timeline that we're working to. So we're obviously on the left-hand side of the screen and seeking views of residents to input into the priorities for the plan and how that will work. But then that will also feed into other local plans and strategies that the council and other partners within the area are developing. Thanks, Richard. Have the next slide, please. So really, I suppose the most important thing for us to get it right is that we really need to hear from you about what's important to keeping you well and healthy in your area. And as Fidelia mentioned at the beginning of the session, we do have a very short survey that we've developed that will be online by the end of this week that we'll be able to share with you, but we also have downloadable kind of paper copies as well that we'll be able to circulate. So we'd really value your input into that survey to help us make sure that the plan and the strategy really responds to kind of the local need within the area. Thanks, Richard. The next slide. So yeah, what we really want to hear from you is kind of what has the most impact on your health and well-being in the Chew Valley. And we, yeah, as I just said, we'll circulate the link to the survey and a link to a paper version as well. And if you have any questions or queries, we'll be able to take some questions in a minute, but there's also an email address if you need to get in touch with Fidelia or I, and I'll hand it back to Richard now. Thank you.
What's the closing date for that survey, Nancy? What do you need? When do you need the response back?
It's the 31st of October.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. So if it's okay, Chris, I'll go on to give a little bit of a background about the local plan and the clear links between the local plan and hopefully helping to deliver some of the priorities of the health and well-being strategy. So before I go into too much detail about the sort of new local plan, just as a reminder to everybody, we have been preparing a partial update to our local plan, which, as the name suggests, just updates some of the policies of the core strategy and the placemaking plan and effectively bridges the gap, I suppose, between those plans and the new local plan. That plan is well advanced in its preparation, so it's at examination by a planning inspector. And the reason I've just raised it here is because the modifications or the changes to the plan that the inspector has requested, the consultation on those modifications actually started today for 6 weeks. So if you've got any comments on the modifications, please send them to the council. We will then forward them to the inspector for the inspector to consider. It's hoped then that we'll get the inspector's report hopefully in December of this year, and we should be able to adopt the partial update hopefully early next year, probably in January. Just to say, the modification is generally really good news. They don't change the substance of the sort of policy approach we're taking as a council. And you know, they're mainly there to make the policies really a little bit clearer for decision makers. So that was just a sort of brief plug for that, if you like. In terms of the new local plan, you know, alongside finishing off the partial update, we are now commencing work on the new local plan. We're publishing the launch document early next month, so that will be published on the 4th of October, again for consultation. So the launch document will really just set out the scope of the plan, the priorities for the plan, how we propose to prepare it, and how we propose to engage with local communities, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a moment. We want comments on the launch document, but really the purpose of the launch document is, as its name suggests, is to launch a much longer period of working with all of you across the district, really to identify the main issues affecting the communities you live in, and the options, if you like, as to how the local plan could help to address those issues. So as it says there, the local plan, very much a key tool in setting the agenda for placemaking and the form and location of development as it comes forward, including, in trying to make sure that we're providing healthy places where things like physical activity are encouraged, where where the natural environment very much forms part of those places, again, shown to be very good in terms of both physical but also mental health. Just to remind people, the WECA spatial development strategy was proposed to, if you like, set the sub-regional context for our local plan, and that would have set the overall housing number and the overall job requirements that we would have had to plan for. But as many of you may be aware, the WECA mayor has decided to halt work on the spatial development strategy. So basically the three local authorities of ourselves, Bristol City Council and South Gloucestershire Council, will be working together on our local plans, and those will form the planning framework for the area. As it's a new local plan and it covers a long time period over the next sort of 15 to 20 years, there's a real opportunity to be ambitious in terms of its approach to whether it's the climate emergency, in terms of addressing health issues. So there's a real opportunity to be ambitious in this new plan. And as it says there, it does very much align with other initiatives and other strategies of the council. So in terms of the priorities for the local plan, these are set out in the launch document, and they need to be seen within the context of the council's primary purpose is all about improving people's lives, and within that context, there's four main priorities or four primary ambitions for the plan that have been suggested at this point. So that's responding to the challenge of the climate emergency, maximising delivery of affordable housing and trying to meet the housing needs of the area. Also very much focusing on protecting and enhancing nature and identifying nature recovery networks and helping deliver those, as well as focusing on economic growth and making sure that we're creating the opportunity for the types of jobs that are needed in our communities. In addition to those sort of four primary ambitions, there are a number of other issues that the plan will need to address, and they're listed there. So again, maintaining housing land supply so that we can keep control over the location and form of housing across the district. As I've already said, making sure we're delivering high quality development that can support vibrant, healthy and successful communities. We need to embed very much an approach to transport and movement that facilitates change to more sustainable modes of transport, and in that sense supports the Livable Neighbourhoods projects that Ashley spoke about, as well as supporting active travel, which again has health benefits as well as climate emergency or sustainability benefits. We need to ensure that new development is aligned with the necessary infrastructure, perhaps better than it has been sometimes in the past. Again, protecting both the historical, the heritage environment, but also the natural environment within the district. And in terms of helping to address the climate emergency, seeking to facilitate increased renewable energy generation within the district. In terms of working with yourselves on the plan, set out on that slide just the key sort of periods of public engagement. So we really want to have a good and productive conversations with yourselves later this year in terms of starting to identify the issues and opportunities and priorities that are particularly important to your communities, and then moving through to sort of the summer of next year, building upon those issues that you've identified with us, to start looking at options as to how the local plan can help address those issues. And then that will then feed into a more formal period of consultation on an options document this sort of time next year. And a request or something to discuss with yourselves, you don't necessarily have to tell us now, but it would be useful if you can feed this through to me at some point, preferably in the next couple of weeks, is really how you want us to engage with your communities and what role you want to play. Start thinking maybe about how you want to organise yourselves, whether that's, parish working groups, or whether that's neighbourhood planning groups, if you've got those set up, or joint working groups covering a number of parishes and a number of communities. It'd be helpful if you can start thinking about how you might want to organise yourselves so that we can make that conversation as organised and as useful as possible. There's also a need to just look at and think about the role of the local plan, the new local plan, and its relationship with neighbourhood plans. Obviously in this area, obviously you've got the Chew Valley neighbourhood plan. So for example, does that neighbourhood plan need to be reviewed? If so, what would be the best timing for that review so that it marries with and helps deliver, if you like, the local plan. So we're not starting with a blank canvas. I think it's fair to say obviously there's a planning framework in place in the Chew Valley, right the way from sort of national policy through to the placemaking plan, where we did identify and allocate sites for some fairly limited housing development in a number of villages. We identified local green spaces for protection, but it's not just the council's placemaking plan. It's obviously, as I've already said, it's the Chew Valley neighbourhood plan, which forms a really important part of the development plan in the district. So that's, if you like, the starting point, and we will review that in light of the issues that really come out of the conversation with yourselves. And I think as a council, what we're wanting to achieve in the autumn is a really joined up conversation to help identify all of those key issues that affect the Chew Valley and its communities. And some of those will be addressed through the local plan, but others might be addressed by other plans or other strategies in the area. I mean, I've listed there just some of the key issues that I think face some of the communities in the Chew Valley. Not surprisingly around employment, but also around housing, particularly affordability of housing, and making sure, as I say, that if we're going to provide additional housing, that actually is the right type of housing to help meet those local needs. As I've already talked about, opportunities to improve nature, transport, we know is a key issue. The relatively poor links from a public transport perspective to Bristol and Bath, issues around parking provision for different types of development, the opportunity to improve walking and cycling, health. Again, going back to Fidelia and Nancy's presentation, across the district there are, unequal outcomes at the moment, and there's inequality, I suppose, in terms of availability and access to local facilities. So again, those are issues that both the health and wellbeing strategy, but also the local plan can help to address. Renewable energy, I've spoken about that. Is there scope to increase either wind or solar energy generation in the Chew Valley? Infrastructure, again, aligning that with new development. Air quality, that was mentioned earlier, again, a key issue in parts of the A37. Local food production, how do we make the best use of land within the Chew Valley area? And, obviously the role of the villages and how those villages link to each other and the relationship between them. So those are just some of the issues, if you like, from a local plan and a health and wellbeing strategy perspective that we would pull out. But I guess, Chris, if there's time, it would be useful to have a sort of quick conversation now about any issues people want to address, or again, just to emphasize, we will be coming out to your various communities and having facilitated workshops to talk about those issues in more detail.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Nancy, as well. And if you can stop sharing your screen, is that okay?
Yeah. Of course.
So I've got a couple, and Pam's got an actual hand up. So I've got your actual hand, Pam. I just wanted on the, if I can, on the health strategy. So I'm involved in the health strategy for Bristol, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire, BNSSB. And one of the deficits on there is input from young people. And I just thought, as we've got Gareth on the call tonight, it'd be really helpful, Gareth, if we could make that link with Chew Valley School to make sure that you there was a way that the young people at Chew Valley could input into the piece of around health and wellbeing. I know quite often they don't see it as an issue, but actually children, young people's health is just missed off the agenda so many times. And it'd be great if you were able to do that. Sorry, I should say that Gareth is the head teacher at Chew Valley School. That's for Nancy and Gareth. Would that be okay?
Good, I'm here. Yes, I am absolutely, yes. And Chris totally agrees. So quite happy to be involved, quite happy to facilitate somebody coming in and working with our young people. But of course, that's not a problem at all.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gareth. Brilliant. Okay.
Thank you. We accept that invitation.
My pleasure. It'd be good to host you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Pam, you had your proper hand up, and
thanks, Richard. I mean, I think that structure of how you're moving forward with the new plan all makes sense. I probably missed something here, but could you say a bit more about the halting of WECA's SDS, why that is? I mean, and whether or not this is connected in some way with the new, not the new government, but the new configuration of the government, in terms of, we don't really know at this stage how their attitude to planning, the sort of numbers that they may come up with are going to progress. Can you say a bit about that for me, please?
I can, Pam. Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, really, it was in effect a sort of unilateral decision by the WECA mayor to halt work on the STS, and I think the primary reason really was because, from his perspective, he didn't feel that the three authorities and WECA were able to agree on particularly the housing requirement and the housing figure to be planned for, both across the WECA area and within the individual authorities, and therefore, due to that lack of agreement, and from his perspective, the lack of likelihood of agreement, he therefore halted work on the STS. So, yeah, I suppose in effect it's not linked to the governmental changes, but something that we will need to keep an eye on in terms of, as we progress our local plan, we will also have to, each authority will have to assess its housing need and the housing requirement that it needs to plan for. But in doing that, we will need to keep an eye on the potential changes to the planning system. The new Prime Minister had made reference to her concern that the sort of top-down nature of housing targets is not the right way to go, and we should be moving away to that, to a more locally, sort of local needs-based process. If that happens, and the government's sort of what's called the standard method for calculating housing figures, if that disappears, that may well place a slightly different context for the plan. So we will need to keep an eye on the direction of government on that. But I suppose the key point is we will now be assessing housing need within Baines and planning for that alongside, Bristol and South Gloucestershire doing something similar.
Thanks, Richard.
Richard, I've got a question from Heather, please.
Yeah, hi, Richard. It's a question about the timing of the review of neighbourhood plans. I think we're aware we don't want to jump too soon, and it's just really, will you be giving us an indication of when the time is right to begin that process?
Can I just add a supplementary question in that, Richard, while you're thinking the answer on that? When we did this before, you came up with a placemaking plan, which took out housing allocations out of the neighbourhood plan process. Are you still doing that, or will the neighbourhood plans be able to bring in housing allocations within them?
Thanks, Chris and Heather. So, in terms of the timing of the review of the neighbourhood plan, yes, we will, have that conversation with you and provide, our advice to you. What want to avoid, I guess, particularly when, as you know, whenever a plan is to be adopted, that's the one that takes precedence. So it would be sensible to review the neighbourhood plan alongside preparation of the local plan, such that hopefully the local plan is adopted first, and then the neighbourhood plan can, swiftly follows after that. But again, as I say, we'll have a more detailed conversation about that in terms of programme. In terms of housing allocations, again, this is something that we really would like to discuss with local communities and get their views on. We felt before in the placemaking plan that was a helpful approach in terms of working with parish councils and communities in identifying housing sites and allocating those through the placemaking plan, hopefully, through quite a lot of agreement. That wasn't the case in every village, but I think a lot of villages did agree with the sites that were put forward, just because we felt that was helpful to parishes and local communities to not have to go through, if you like, the pain of an examination on their neighbourhood plan. But if communities would rather allocate sites through their neighbourhood plan, then clearly that also is an option. And that, as I say, something we'll be talking with you. Yeah,
I was particularly thinking of that statement you made right at the beginning on one of your earlier slides, which actually that the housing would need to respond to local need. And I think one of the things that came up through the neighbourhood planning process was actually, what that need actually was, but it couldn't be met because of the placemaking plan. And actually, is there an opportunity here to drive some of that through, particularly around affordable and appropriately sized houses for communities and villages, and what they actually need to ensure their sustainability and viability, rather than just plonking in large executive housing estates.
Absolutely, Chris, and I think both the local plan and the neighbourhood plan need to be coming from the same direction on that. That is absolutely critical. What is important, or will be important to achieve that, will be the evidence base. So that will be both the evidence that Baines Council collects on local housing needs, but also working with parish councils primarily to identify for specific communities what the housing needs are in that community, and then both through the local plan in allocating sites, or indeed all of a neighbourhood plan in allocating sites, we can make sure there's strong policies in both plans to make sure it's the right type of housing that's provided on those sites. So completely agree, both options are open, Chris, as long as it's supported by evidence, and I think we're happy to take a mix and match approach, really, in terms of which direction local communities would want to go in.
We were just reflecting that actually the member organisations of the Chew Valley Forum, we've got the largest number of made neighbourhood plans in the whole of Bath and North East Somerset. So I think there's a few parishes who are members of the forum that haven't got made plans, but by and large, the area is pretty much covered by made neighbourhood plans, and it's a case, and that was Heather's question about making sure that they were properly aligned with your planning process. So I think you're pushing an open door down here, I think would be our assessment. Colleagues, any other questions either for Richard or for Delia about the health and wellbeing strategy? Excellent. No. Okay. So thank you very much. The health and wellbeing strategy is a really important strategy. I know it feels like sometimes it's being consulted to death, but actually this is one of those ones that's really important, because it is going to shape the whole Bath, Swindon, Wiltshire Integrated Care Board strategy for the next, is it 10, 20 years? 20 years, I think, isn't it? Is it 10 years? 20 years, don't know however long they take to remove the deck chairs on the Titanic again, but it's a really important piece of work. I shouldn't undervalue it. Sorry, I'm being that's very naughty of me, but it's really important that we feed into that to make sure that your voices are really heard on that. Sorry, Nancy, you wanted to come in.
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you. That would be great.
And what we'll do, we'll make sure the slides go out with the packs from Sarah. And that we will continue that discussion and continue that forward. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Chris. Yeah,
brilliant.
And We'll be in touch to let you know once the survey is live so that you guys can use your networks to get it done by as much people as possible who live and work in Baines.
Okay. You're both very welcome to stay, because we're going to be talking about an issue about wider determinants of health now, about the cost of living crisis. So you can join into with that, or you're very welcome to go. So I'll leave it up to you. Nothing personal. So we'll move on. Okay.
We'll stay. I'll stay.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Nancy. Okay, so that was the last of our sort of speakers. We haven't got any more speakers, so we've got 25 minutes before we finish. I'll try and finish a little bit earlier. One of the speakers who we were going to have, Ashley Bainton, who's a project manager. No, sorry, I'm on the wrong page in my notes. Dan Node, who's from the emergency planning team, isn't able to join us tonight because he's dealing with a real life emergency. You may have seen from the news that there was a big fire in Bath yesterday or this morning, 3 o'clock this morning. A bed and breakfast stroke pub was suffered badly in Grove Street. He's unfortunately had to stay back and is now dealing with that emergency situation. So he won't be joining us tonight. So we'll make sure that comes onto the agenda at a future meeting, if that's okay. So what we just thought, we'd just have a quick chat around. And again, I appreciate there's not hundreds of people on the call at the moment, but we had a chat last time about the cost of living crisis. And we just wanted to see what was currently on people's agendas and what was coming forward about cost of living, and both how you were, what was coming forward, and also how you were thinking as communities of dealing with that or approaching that, if there's anything that you've got coming forward. I would offer to kick it off, but this is free for all now, so just butt in if you want to. Lynn's gone off to do something else. I'm sure she'd have something to say, but
I have to go now. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, Pam. Thanks for joining us. Pam, just before you go though, can you just put your hand up because we needed you to be quorate. So can you just say I'm here for the meeting?
What, the AGM?
Yeah. I
can't stay any longer.
No. But you're here for the record. That's okay.
Okay.
You've attended the meeting.
Yes, I'm here for the record. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Okay. Okay.
Sorry you're leaving, Chris. You've been a fantastic chair.
No. You don't need to say things like that, Pam.
Take care.
It's all right.
See you soon.
Okay. So anything that people are experiencing, I know obviously the news about the fuel bills today for, well, Gareth in particular, but also for those of us that run community buildings as well, has been interesting, and I'm not quite sure how we get our heads around that at the moment and what that actually looks like. I haven't seen any work through figures for it, but it's certainly better than it was this time yesterday. It's certainly better than it was. That's on community buildings. And I know, Sarah, you've been working on some projects about community warm spaces. So looking at how we can make spaces available in the winter so that people can come out during the middle of the day to go to warmer spaces. But again, that was kind of slightly reliant on what was happening from an announcement from government today about fuel. So there's that. Then there's issues around, we've got food bank, access to food banks. And again, your colleagues will know that there are no food banks in the Chew Valley, so people will be directed towards Keynsham or Midsummer Norton for food banks. So you need to know where those are as well.
There are some informal food banks, right? As well outside the heart surgery. So
okay.
But if people can let us know some of those, so we can start building up some information that we can share with colleagues, and maybe I need to connect with Jackie, obviously the working group are looking at building your energy working group are looking at building some information. So maybe we need to connect with them. But any information that you have about local initiatives and local projects, like Heather mentioned, about sort of informal food banks and support, we'd really welcome that, because what we're trying to do is create as much information as possible so that services like the CAB or the village agents or other support services can direct people to the support that's needed And as more information comes forward, we can share that. And the council is looking to the Community Wellbeing Hub as a central place to encourage people to phone to get support. So the more information we have that we can feed into the hub, the better. So please do send us the information. And we'd like to know also about issues that you're hearing about that perhaps we wouldn't hear, and particularly from rural communities, issues might be different for those in more urban settings in the city and the towns.
Thanks. And that is really, and again, I mean, I don't need to teach. It's a bit like teaching to suck eggs, but one of the challenges of rural areas, particularly, is that you get people who won't come forward, who need help and need support because they're compromised either financially, or they have transport issues, or they just feel they don't want to come forward. So if you can signpost, if we can get this information out, it'd be really, really helpful. So it is going to be it's going to be quite a challenge. But as Sarah says, if you've got stuff that you are aware of that's coming up, either problems or solutions, then putting them through via Sarah would be brilliant. And the village agents are around as well, so we continue to work through them as well. Okay, right. Not one for prolonging meetings just because my agenda tells me I've got another 5 minutes to speak on this. Jeff, did you want to say your bit now? Is that okay?
My bit.
I've put you down on the agenda to say a bit about the place team.
Okay. So I'm going to
pass. This is my colleague Jackie, who's just been sitting next to me all evening.
So I think some of you might remember I came to the last Area Forum meeting just to introduce myself as the council's lead officer for the Chew Valley. I'm here to sort of listen to and I suppose advocate on behalf of your kind of concerns and priorities. I've had some interesting, useful conversations with a few people in July, Chris and Jackie, and I've started to get a sense of what some of the priorities are here. But I think one of the things we're keen to do as a council is make sure that we deal in the round with the priorities of the local place. And some of those are starting to come up and sort of hearing them reflected in the conversations that we've had here today. So around transport as a particular issue, cost of living crisis and how it affects rural areas in particular, but also housing and potentially some other things. I think what would be really helpful, I would find helpful, is just the ability to have a bit of an offline discussion with people to understand a bit more about the priorities in this area and what you feel the council can do about them. A lot of that will be through things like the local plan, the wellbeing strategy, the economic strategy, but sort of listing once and then trying to join up the way we respond. Because we're conscious that often it can feel a little bit siloed, and the council's doing lots of individual things, but does it really make sense from the perspective of people here? So I'm open to suggestions for how best to do that. I'm very happy to sort of coordinate a virtual roundtable, just to have a conversation on some of those issues, if that would work for people. I know it makes it's easier since we've moved to online meetings to just put something like that an hour in the diary, but I'd welcome some feedback. I would like to open a conversation and have an ongoing sort of interaction with the parishes and groups in this area. So that's just a little bit, if that's helpful. I'll take any feedback now, or if people would like to sort of put themselves forward, or maybe after the meeting. I know we don't have everyone here today, to sort of have a follow-up conversation. That would be really welcomed.
Brilliant. And I was just checking with Sarah as well, because I think we've been meeting now online for was 2.5 years, isn't it? And we've not actually met in person again. And this is without asking Gareth whether it's still available for use by the community, but it is. It gets thumbs up. I was just checking with Sarah that we've still got a budget for some in-person meetings. So this may be your last meeting with me on Zoom. You may actually have to start having real meetings again in real life with people. I don't know. Is that all right? Sorry,
I think if everybody is up for that, then yes.
But I think it's certainly
something
that we've missed, isn't it? Is that meeting in person again? And I know it's been convenient to have meetings online. We've had some good attendance, but actually we're probably back in that space again, where actually face-to-face meetings. Maybe every other meeting, something like that might be.
We have to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Thanks, Jackie, for that. And Jackie's thing about having little face-to-face meetings as well. or little working groups, I think is a really good idea, and that will sort of get some. I know the climate nature emergency working groups have been really powerful just to have, but this would be really focused task force groups. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Jackie. So we're just going to quickly whip on to the AGM bit of the meeting. So you've all been circulated the annual review paper with the earlier papers. I'm not going to go through that because it was about all of the forums activities, all 5 forums activities. But I just think it just really reflects on the breadth of and nature of discussions that we've had, particularly over the last year, which again have all been online. And I noticed the last one you put had no topic, but I think actually it was a very rich discussion because there was no theme. There was no theme to it. I think it was really good. So thank you for that, and thank you for those of you that have persevered with this. In terms of the AGM, we haven't had any requests to update the terms of reference, so I'm going to leave those as they are. And then normally what I would do at this stage is I would normally hand over to Sarah, and Sarah would then conduct all the elections for chair and vice chair and all that kind of stuff. But because I'm standing down, I don't actually need to leave the room. I can stay in the room and I can manage this part of the process. So I would like to say that we've had one nomination for chair from Heather. Thank you very much, Heather, which is brilliant. And we've had a nomination from Lynn as vice chair. So that's great, Lynn. Thank you so much for agreeing to do that. And I'm really pleased to be able to hand this over to Heather. So Heather's a councillor. Just put that on my camera technology. Heather's councillor for Stowe Sutton Parish Council, and you've been involved in so many projects in Stowe, which has been brilliant, including things like the local community library project, which is amazing. I urge you to come and see the community library; it's brilliant, as well as improvements to the play park. So Heather's been working really, sitting alongside me for quite a long time now.
Yes, trying to learn all the tricks of your training.
And I'm really pleased that Heather's joining us. And Lynn also, I'm so pleased Lynn's agreed to be vice chair as well. Lynn's councillor in Chew Magna and has been involved in the flood resilience programme, and some lovely pictures of you walking around in fluorescent jackets, Lynn. But it's been brilliant to have you involved, flood wardens and supporting people during COVID. So it's really great that you're able to join us. So well done. Thank you very much for joining us. And I would like to say particularly thank you to 2 colleagues, Sarah in particular and Alison. Alison's not well tonight, so she can't join us, but Sarah and then latterly Alison have been absolute stalwarts in keeping this thing going. I just rock up at meetings and say what I'm told to say in front of me in bits of paper. They do all of the work behind the scenes. They're absolutely a powerhouse in terms of keeping this thing going. Both, we've been doing this for 2014, so that's 8 years we've been keeping this going. So it's brilliant. And I didn't do a sort of analysis of how many people we've had to come speak or how many meetings we've had or how much we've done, but it does feel like we've done some amazing work. And I think the key thing for me about the forums is that it sits alongside the work that you guys are doing at parish council level or at the schools or at doctor's surgeries or the health system. It sits alongside that, but it picks up those things that we miss out on if we didn't work together. So it picks up things like transport. Lynn, I know that the flooding, obviously, you focused on Chew Magna, but actually flooding is a Chew Valley-wide problem. And for Gareth, kids at the school, we had that session at the school where we had the kids talk to us about transport, really impactful session. And also some issues around mental health. We had a session on a family who'd survived drug abuse, come through the other side of that and talked to us about that. Really powerful session that was. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for being part of this process over the last 8 years with me. It's going to continue. You may not see me quite so much, but I'm going to still be around, still running village agents and still running projects like that, to running transport projects. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to both everyone who's on the call tonight and people who aren't on the call tonight, actually, because we have had meetings. We had about 60 people at one meeting, didn't we? And, we've had a lot of people coming to meetings, so it's been really great. So thank you so much, everyone, for your support, keeping it going. And I mean that
Well, can I ask, or actually, just for the minutes, could we just have a vote for the proposed nominations, just so we can tidy things up? So it's just a raising the hand for the chair being Heather, replacing Chris. If people are happy with that, there's thumbs up and people waving, so we're going to take that as.
I'm not staying on, so that's taken as read.
And to accept Lynn's nomination. Thank you, Lynn, for stepping in as vice chair.
Thank you.
Just have a moment.
I've got people queuing up to have moments now. Oh dear, here we go.
Okay, a moment before you sort of slip out of the door, Chris. I mean, I think Pam said before she went, you've been a fantastic chair. 8 years. Gosh, what a distance the forum has come. So professional, such a good chair, fantastic. We've just got a couple of cards and this little voucher to send you on your way. And I just need to draw people's attention to the fact that you will be part of the Chew Valley Arts Trail, doing photography and lino prints. So we hope that you can use that for your photography or watercolouring or whatever else. And it's with thanks from everybody, not just forum members, but right the way across the Chew Valley.
Thank you so much.
Really heartfelt thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I think we would echo that on behalf of the council. Obviously, I've only been here for 2 meetings, but I know that coming into the council in this role, that your role and the vibrancy of Chew Valley Area Forum have really been sort of like singled out as a fantastic example. You know, a brilliantly run forum. So thank you.
I'm going to cry now, and so I'm going to sign up. No, actually, I need to hand over to the new chair of the forum, who will now do all the closing bits and sign off.
Yeah, just to say thank you to everybody again who has contributed and been at the meeting. I don't think we have a date for the next one.
We don't as yet. Normally we have a budget meeting or a budget engagement meeting. We're just working through some of those details at the moment. So we'll let people know about a date for November.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. So dates will come out. And yeah, Lynn, I'm sure look forward to meeting with everybody and carrying on the good work as much as we are able to. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye. Bye.